To get started yet, this is your 2-minute warning. We're going to get started in about 2 minutes. If we can start to find our seats, get our coffee, get everything organized, we'll be ready to go in 2 minutes. Thank you.
to the types of environmental problems we have on the site. If you look at the education program, we have had a lot of graduate students go through the Savannah River Ecology Lab. Over 600 theses and dissertations, over 700 undergraduates through experiential learning programs, and literally thousands of postbacks who come as techs, work with us for a period of time, and then go on about their career or go into graduate school. Education is a very, very important part of what we do. It's preparing for the next generation's workforce. It's preparing students to understand the unique problems that occur on a DOE site and the kinds of things that they need to be prepared to do if they're going to incorporate that into their future. We're proud to say there's lots and lots of ex-SRE-alians in the DOE and contractor ranks on the Savannah River site, so we also contribute significantly to workforce development. If you look at our outreach programs, we do a lot of outreach in the local communities. We have a lot of K through 12 outreach. We also have outreach to programs that touch the general public in lots of different ways. From the adult population standpoint, we conduct educator workshops. And in 23, we held 387 events, reached over 32,000 people, had 13,000 social media followers, 475,000 media impressions, and 99 media mentions, which translates to about 350 million media reach. So we have a very significant and growing social media part to the lab, which was really born in COVID, right? When COVID came along, we did not have the ability to go into schools like we normally do and conduct these programs. So we turned our attention to how we could get in our message out, and that was through social media, and we've grown quite a bit there. The other component there is while we're holding the same number of events, between 375 and 400, those numbers are starting to grow. The 32,000 will probably be at 40 to 45, maybe 50,000 this year, and we're shooting for what we reached in the past was about 60,000. So post-COVID, we're slowly building back into the general public where we're face-to-face with folks. If you look at us in 23, we had about 176 staff and students over the course of the year. Important numbers there would be the research faculty. Those are research scientists that are work at the Savannah River Ecology Lab. Then we have tenure track faculty who are jointly appointed between the Savannah River Ecology Laboratory and main campus units. We have some emeritus faculty, postdocs. Our outreach team has 5 people. These research professionals are generally master's level people, some bachelor's level, who come and work and sort of are the workhorses of the research engine there. And research support are some of those temporary technicians that come in. We had 69 graduate students in 23. That number goes back and forth from like high 60s to low 80s, depending on the year and how many we graduate. And then 19 admin and support folks. So if you look at the disciplinary expertise, we're not like a main campus unit department. We have a lot of different moving parts at the ecology lab, and we have to cover them from the folks that we have here. So if you look, you wouldn't find all these people in one department, right, in any university. What we have are a representative group who are very interdisciplinary, who come from a wide diversity of disciplines who work together right down the hall from one another. And that's an exciting thing because it means that somebody who's working on wild pig ecology, for example, has an office next to somebody who's working on epigenetics and next generation metabolomic and glycomic technologies. What that results in is some really interesting collaborations, interactions. So we've got folks who are in basic aquatic and terrestrial ecology, geology, environmental microbiology. Then we have people working in various aspects of genetics and environmental chemistry, radioecology. We have a number of people that work in ecotoxicology or risk assessment, and then wildlife ecology, disease, plant physiology, and all kinds of things. And we just recently made a hire in AI/ML modeling and statistics. So we have in total 19 faculty, 5 of those are on campus, the rest are at the ecology lab. If you look at our recent funding history, this goes back to 2005. There were, as many of you know, there was a large downturn in funding in 2007. What that represents, it used to be that the majority of the funding from the lab came from headquarters. That shifted, that money went away, and then we've regrown the lab in another model. And that model has been funding that we get from the Department of Energy on the site, a larger emphasis on this purple bar, which is funding we go out and find from other agencies such as USDA, NSF, Department of Defense, and other places, and then UGA's contribution in red. So one of the reasons you see this bar growing is not necessarily, sort of in here, we have sort of settled into a relative plateau with the DOE funding, but what's happening is we've leveraged more UGA funding and we've gotten more and more successful at getting this outside funding from other places. So for example, we have a number of USDA grants right now that are funding us to do things like rabies work here on the Savannah River site that's nationally important. Wild pigs become a problem nationally, right? One of the places that the USDA is investing funds for us to work on questions relative to wild pig eradication is here on the Savannah River site working with us. So there's a variety of these different things. What we try and do is we try and use the unique opportunities of the Savannah River site to get other federal agencies and groups to invest money here with us to ask questions of national importance. One of the other things that's happened over time is if you've heard me speak before, you know that I'm all about leveraging funds, right? So my mantra is every federal dollar is lonely and it's looking for a match. And so our job is to give it that match, okay? So the bottom line is, if you look at where we stood in 23, 39% of our budget was from EM's core dollars that they give us, 10% from Tritium, 5% from SRPPF, 23% from UGA, and 23% that we went and got ourselves. All right, what that represents is that the ecology labs basically provided 46% of its own budget last year. That's great, right? That means we're doing a fantastic job of leveraging DOE's money. But it also is a really hard life as a director, as you might can imagine, because we're soft money. We're about 80% soft moneyed, which means that our job is to go out and find the resources to keep that lab moving. So one of the things, and I'll talk about it later, one of the things that I've been talking to DOE about is finding ways to increase these pieces of that pie. Not with the idea that that part will take up more, but with you give me more, I'm gonna go get more, right? So we can grow the lab and become more stable than we are today, but we have to have a larger core base. And this CAB has put several recommendations forth over the years that just to that effect, right? I think we've made the case that if you invest in us, that investment's going to be returned. I think DOE feels positively about that. As we transition through this landlord change, we hope to come out the other side with additional resources that we can use for some very specific things, and I'll talk about those in a minute. Significant events in 22. One of the cool things about the lab is because we have a cost share commitment to DOE, about 75% of the indirect costs that are paid come back to the lab to run it. So if you really look at the numbers, about 7 cents on every dollar that we get actually stays at Georgia to support, the business services. Everything else comes back. So we use those dollars to upkeep our facilities. We use those to hire all our support staff. We use those to maintain our safety programs. So we're a pretty good investment when you think about the fact that of the overhead that is paid by DOE, only a tiny, tiny fraction of that actually ever leaves the site. Okay. Other things that I put here is we cost shared 11 faculty. That's part of that leveraging. I use DOE dollars to match dollars on campus to get these faculty positions. So what happens is that I make a little bit of the DOE money go a long way, and we end up with a faculty member who then can generate their own research and go out and find those external dollars. And then we provide funding for equipment and people, and we cost share graduate students the same way. The building equipment, utilities, and site access are some of the things that are being provided to us. We have a 5-year cooperative agreement with DOE. It started in 21. It's in, I think, in its 3rd year. We have funding from the National Nuclear Security Administration to do very specific projects, and we get some funding from area closure projects, and now SRMC as well. If you look at work scope and advancements in 23, we did significant land management activities for set-asides, and we collaborated with the Forest Service to restore habitats for threatened species. So one of the things that's happened over the last couple of years is we've engaged with the Forest Service a lot more directly than we had in the past. We've always worked with them, but over the last few years, the philosophies have changed, some of the drivers have changed, and now we're trying to work with the Forest Service now on a watershed by watershed basis to try and inject the ecological side of the equation, right? You're not just managing for timber, you're also managing for clean water, you're managing for wildlife and diversity and all those other things, and they're good partners and willing partners in that. So we're starting to find ways to work with them more closely to get things done that are for the general good of the environment. Not that they didn't do that before, but they do it now with us as partners. The other is we just finished a restoration for an endangered, a threatened species, the gopher frog. This is sort of what started the whole idea of us working more closely with them. We worked with the Forest Service to actually go in and do their timber prescriptions in a very specific way to restore habitat for the gopher frog, which is threatened throughout its range here in the Southeast, which means that with our ecologists working to restore the gopher frog and them providing, the Forest Service providing the muscle to do the appropriate timber prescriptions, we've been very successful. So that's a good partnership we want to continue to build. We advised 69 graduate students, 146 graduate students total were mentored by my faculty, taught 30 courses on the main UGA campus, including 3 at SREL. So one of the things that comes with these cost-shared faculty positions is they have teaching responsibilities. When I got to SREL 11, 12 years ago, my faculty didn't have any teaching responsibilities because none of them were tenure track. And so as we built that larger faculty, we've also become more involved in instruction on campus as well as at SREL. So we teach some experiential learning courses at SREL. A good example of one would be fire. These kids in the natural resources, really, a number of them will go on to work with the Forest Service, for example, and they need to know how to manage and fight fire. We teach a course here in concert with the Forest Service that gets them accredited to do that at the national level. And then I won't go through the litany, but we collaborate with a lot of groups across the nation and here on site. We do work with the Savannah River National Lab, and even more now that we're part of BSRA. The Forest Service, Savannah River Mission Completion, Department of Agriculture, as I mentioned earlier, fund some of our work. The National Science Foundation, the Army Corps of Engineers, and then a variety of other state, federal, and private entities. So those funds that have grown now in terms of external dollars, those are coming from these places like the USDA, NSF, DOD, Army Corps of Engineers, and others. And so I think as of last year, we were between $2.5 and $3 million of those dollars that are coming into the lab that we go competitively get. Work scope, we provided ecological research support to area closure projects, SRMC and SRNL. We submitted 30 proposals last year, and we hired 2 new tenure track faculty, one in disease ecology, who was a replacement, and one who modeling AI/ML, who was new. We got that because I had a biochemist leave, I had 2 faculty members leave, and I ended up replacing them with 4. All right, and I did that by leveraging campus and getting campus to invest resources and match me with those positions. And so that's enhanced our capabilities. It will enhance our ability to move forward and compete for additional dollars. Scientific productivity, we published about 80 papers last year, and we gave over 180 scientific presentations. That's a little down. We normally are closer to 100, but what's happened is we lost some senior folks. They left and retired, and we got some new ones So we're crossing in the middle of the night, right? So as these new ones build their program, those numbers will go right back up. Analytical services, so we do our own analytical in-house work for a lot of things. We do all of our metals analysis and our radionuclide analysis. We also do our own mercury analyses. I set that up as an internal mechanism, and we did almost 5,000 samples last year in-house. And we have a very, very good analytical services, very high quality, and we're the envy of the campus's eye in some of those regards because we do such a good job. Showing turnaround on investment. These are more academic numbers, but I'll just give them to you. So if you look at graduate students, every faculty member is one EFT, right? One unit of effort. So on the research side, they range from 50% to 75%. And so if you add up all those percentages effort across my faculty and you look at the number of graduate students, we have 8 graduate students per 1 research EFT. That's huge, right? That's really, really large compared to what you see on the main campus. 9 publications per faculty member in that same vein. You put their research EFTs and how many people I have dedicated total percentage-wise to research, 9 publications per year is huge. And the average impact factor, this is a scholarly measure of how often your publications are cited. And an impact factor of 4 is pretty good, okay? What that means is they came up with these scholarly ways to measure impact within the academic community. With us, I've tried to grow that over time, and we have been able to do so. Our unit generates $750,000 per 1 faculty research EFT in total dollars. And we unit 3 to 4 in external funds for every dollar UGA invests. So I have 2 masters, right? I have the vice president for research who I work for, and then I work in partnership with DOE. UGA has to see us as a good investment too, or none of it works. And this is a good investment, right? That means that we go out there and we get enough external dollars so that the money that they give us to support us is well matched. And our growth since 2012, we've gone from 46 to 191. That was last year. Our graduate students, we have 6 when I got here. We had 81 last year, the year before, and then faculty 7 to 19. So we have grown considerably, and we've grown mostly because our vision is that as we've been able to get more resources from DOE, we've gone and got more resources from other places to match it. Opportunities for 24. Increasing UGA collaboration with BSRA partners. In Clemson, South Carolina State, Georgia Tech, and Georgia are all in the BSRA partnership with Battelle to run the national lab. We meet regularly, we're engaged, and we're working to try and find ways to enhance, that relationship with SRNL over time to find places we can work together. It's a slow process. But this year we were pretty successful. We worked with one of the modelers at SRNL and then my field staff who have expertise in ecotoxicology, and we landed our first $3 million grant from CERTIP, working in partnership with them to do work on military bases. So we hope that is the beginning of these kinds of relationships with the National Lab. Other things that we're going to do is continue development of the core mission here on SRS. Radioecology and low-dose radiation effects, metal and radionuclide ecotoxicology, radionuclide fate and transport, enhanced biomonitoring and outreach and education programs. Those are some of the things that we do every day, okay? So we do lots of things, but these things are at the heart of what we do every day. They're on the site. Some of the things that are going to help this are enhanced analytical capabilities. We have high resolution, they call it ICP-MS, So these machines are capable of looking at parts per billion of metals in the environment. We have a machine that we haven't even cranked up yet. We're still waiting on the opportunity to do so. It basically looks at, it's thermal ion spectroscopy, and it looks at ratios of elements. And then we have high resolution mercury isotope analyses. Another thing that we're still pursuing is a land lease. If you look up here, our conference center sits in the middle of all this land on the other side of 278 on the edge of the site. We went through a year's process of site use permits and proposals to get to a point where that is being in its final consideration. But with the change in landlord to NNSA, that process has been stopped while they review this as well. So what we hope to do is to get this land in a lease so that we can expand our outreach programs, we can expand our education programs, and incorporate some long-term research up there on that part of the site, far from the more protected areas where we can do things that aren't easily done on the site otherwise. So I thought I'd just throw through just a few slides about some of the things that are generally important that we do. So potential consumption risk, right? So what you want to, why is that ecology lab out there? Well, we're doing studies on pigs and fish and deer and ducks and turkeys and alligators and snapping turtles. I bet you can't do that quick either, right? So, all right, but the bottom line is all these things that are part of the food chain, right, in the Southeast, where I grew up, that we work on them, right? We work on them. We look to see what kind of metals. We look to see what kind of radionuclides. We look to see how long they live and how that matters as to whether or not there's a risk. And so all of those data then are things that then get incorporated back into how the site evaluates risk, right, for people that live around this site. So one of the things that we do is we sort of look at these game species and these potential reservoirs for contaminants and pathways into the food chain, and we ask questions about what risk do they really pose, right? Ducks, of course, are a great example. Ducks come, they stay here for a while, and then they leave, and somebody eats them somewhere else, okay? So what risk do they pose? And we've been working on those kinds of questions for decades, and it turns out they pose very little risk. You got to eat a lot of them if you really want a problem, but they eliminate a lot of the contaminants that we're worried about, either by storing them in feathers or just by passing through their body and out again over a short period of time, right? So the short period of time they spend here does not give them enough of an exposure here to make them a huge concern somewhere else, right? That's important to know because that's a liability. Ecological receptors and environmental risk assessment. So where do these radionuclides go and how can we measure them? So there are all of these things, all of these species that have different places in the food chain, right? So you see that snake up there? That's a water snake, that's a brown water snake. And that water snake has a high position in the trophic system of that aquatic food chain. So all of these things that are absorbing contaminants, it eats. Right? So if you look at it, you can tell how safe, right, or how contaminated that whole system is because they're all eating things that go up the food chain and end up in that snake. All right? Otherwise, you're looking at things that get exposed in various ways, like this salamander and this toad, right? And even this turtle. They're in the water, right? They live in the water. Their skin is made to absorb that water and move back and forth, so easy for contaminants to move back and forth. By looking at those guys, we start to see how things that are exposed to contaminants on the site accumulate those contaminants and how that might change their ability to survive. Turtles are long-lived. That's important because something like strontium, right? So it used to be, years ago, that it wasn't that difficult to find a turtle in certain areas that had a radioactive shell. Why? Because strontium stores like bone, right? And when that was more common here, that was where it's stored. So you had a turtle that lived 50 years that could accumulate that, and it all ended up in its shell, right? You don't see those very often anymore because there's not much of that around. But, place to look. And raccoons, that's one of my favorites. I'm working on raccoons. I worked on raccoons when I was at Purdue. I'm working at them here, and we're helping the National Rabies Program. We're doing things here with raccoons that will help them understand how to eliminate rabies throughout the entire Southeast. And we're doing it here because I can do it in a relatively secure area where I have no worries about anything that we do affecting the general public, and I can do it in lowland swamps, pine plantations, isolated wetlands, and riparian areas, which are streams corridors, and which are representative of 80% of the rest of the Southeast, and I can do it all right here, right? So we've been working with them for about 5 or 6 years, and we're helping them figure out what strategies they're going to use to try and eliminate raccoon rabies in the Southeast. That's the kind of thing we enjoy doing because it's nationally important and it can only be done here. Biomonitoring, you also have, I mentioned the snakes, right? You got green-bellied water snakes as well. And you have these guys, mosquitoes, for example. So we're working with mosquitoes. So why are we working with mosquitoes? A couple different reasons. One is you've got a 300 square mile area that's been left out, not changed like the rest of the land around it. So diseases that potentially lurk in the Southeast have a potential to be here, right? Have a potential to collect here because those wildlife and habitats haven't changed all that much. And we butt up against the Savannah River. Butting up against the Savannah River means that cargo ships that come into the Savannah Harbor, and whatever they bring, go right up the Savannah River, and where are they going to end up? They're going to end up in the Savannah River swamp, right, where we are, where we can see them, right? So early warning system's part of it. The other part of it is these little buggers are out there biting everything they can get their proboscis into, and they're sampling for us, right? So if I'm interested in disease, I go look at the mosquito because it's been out there sampling the blood of all these things. I can even look to contaminants in the mosquito, right? So for some contaminants that are really easily measured from blood, I can look at that little dude and it can tell you if it's been sampling animals that have certain contaminants in it. Right? Alligators are long-lived, and then birds like these guys, they have very unique places in the food chain out there in the terrestrial environment. So, for example, if I'm looking at a treatment area or an area that has contaminants in the water, insects are the easiest way for that to get out, right? Think about it. It's contained, not going anywhere. If it's going to go somewhere, where's it going to go? Insects. Insects that burrow in the sediment, insects that pick up contaminants and leave. Who's going to eat those insects? Once they get out of there, these guys are, birds. So we're looking at birds all over the site in various different ways to look to see whether or not there's any evidence at all that contaminants that are securely secured, right, in these aquatic areas move out. And in some places we see that, in some places we don't. But it's a great way to biomonitor. Environmental stewardship. We are here to take care and do no harm, right? So you want to return this place someday in better condition than you found it, right? And if that's truly the case, then all of these species that we have here, like the gopher tortoise, you have the gopher frog, the red-cockaded woodpecker, and even some of the more common things like squirrels, you have an obligation to protect them. And so one of the things that we enjoy doing is working on those species to try and help make sure that they're still here when we are gone, long gone, right? And that's a part of what the Department of Energy wants too, right? They don't want to lose these species on their watch. They want to protect them, right? And so our job is to help them understand how to do that and what kind of changes they need to make to do that. And then human-wildlife conflict is one that I particularly enjoy. There's my raccoon and the rabies. We have folks that are working on coyotes. We have folks that are working on wild pigs. We've even worked on vultures. We've worked on vultures for the FDA, or for the FAA, to try and help understand the risk of collision with aircraft for vultures. It's a great place to do it. Pigs, we've got a lot of stuff going on with pigs. With the USDA. This is a great place to understand their ecology. We work on their disease, we work on their ecology, and what we're trying to do is help them understand that if they ever get to the point where they want to use toxic baits to treat pigs, which is what they really want to do, that how to do it, right? And how to do it. We're not doing it here, but we're helping them figure out how to do it here. This stuff right here with the coyotes also led to wolves in Chernobyl. We've got one of those, that faculty member parlayed that experience to go work with wolves in Chernobyl, and they used a collar that we developed here that was taking, it was a satellite-based collar that would take your GPS location, and at the same time it would take calculate what your dose was. So it would basically give you a radiation dose and a GPS point, and it would do it every 10 minutes, right? So now I got a wolf, and we also did it with pigs in Fukushima, running around in the middle of nowhere, taking this data for us, right? Mapping the environment that it's in, and it tells you, what we were interested in is, you know, it's hard to understand how an animal in an environment like that is really getting dose, right? Because it's uneven. Like I've been to Chernobyl, and you could take a radio, you know, Geiger counter around, and, you know, screams over here and it's silent over here, right? So if I'm an animal running around in that environment, how am I being dosed, right? Well, that helped us figure that out. It helped us figure out that what the overall impact was in those environments and how we ought to think about it. And then this last one here is deer. I have a faculty member, and we have some students that are working on this. We're working on lighting systems that help us understand the risk of collision with deer. So the last study that we just did looked at driver behavior, and I participated in that study. So you're driving about a 80-kilometer route, and in this cab with you, in this truck cab, there's a FLIR, which is basically forward-looking infrared radar. So the guy sitting in the passenger seat, he sees every deer, every hog, he sees everything that's out there. You don't, right? And then you're telling them when you see the animal. You're telling them, right? And bottom line is we start to understand what we see, what we don't, how we respond, how far these animals are away, when we're using high beams, when we're not, if they're vegetation on the sides of the road, if there are banks on the sides of the road, all of those things to try and understand how we perceive these deer. At the same time, we're doing studies where we're actually altering the lighting on the trucks to see how the deer respond to us. So we have high hopes that some of that's going to produce some research that will be very, very useful in helping prevent deer vehicle collisions. And then mechanistic understanding of contaminant effects. This is more about understanding once the animal has a contaminant, how does it affect it, right? What is the effect on animal's life, its ability to reproduce, its ability to survive? And we do a fair amount of that with amphibians. We do a lot of that with alligators. We're also doing it with, so the reason I have the mosquito up here is that we know, for example, that if you, in our environment, if you expose bacteria to metals, heavy metals, they develop antibiotic resistance because the same genes that they're using to survive in the metals also give them antibiotic resistance, okay? So you can go somewhere where we've never set foot, there's never been a pharmaceutical in the world, and if there are metals there, some of those bacteria will be able to resist antibiotics, right? Just because of evolution. So how does that play out with something like a mosquito, right? You keep dumping these things in there to kill mosquitoes, which have all of these things, and they're still here. They evolved to resist that. What other complications might there be, right? So those are the kinds of questions we're asking with those. Last new initiative, I think, the last two, one is this hot lab. So what we're doing here, this is an ICP-MS I was talking about earlier. It does parts per billion with metals. We're doing it in an environment where we can put samples that are radioactive in it. Once we put samples that are radioactive in that machine, it will be that forever. We can never send it back the other way, okay? But that's why there are not a lot of them. But once because that's a $600,000, $700,000 piece of equipment that you're saying got to stay in this room and is now contaminated forever, all right? And once that happens, you can do work, right, that many people can't, and there's a really important work here. And the last is the NERC Scholars Program. I've mentioned this to you before, but this is when I told you I was trying to get additional resources from EM and NNSA, this is what it's to support, right? Education program tied to environmental justice issues on the Savannah River site, undergraduate experiential learning for students from disadvantaged populations and communities that surround the SRS. I'll stop there and tell you why I'm interested in this. So I've been involved in a lot of experiential learning programs, right? I've been a faculty member for a long time. A lot of summer-long programs. One of the things that happens here is over the course of a year, 400 students come to the Savannah River site, graduate students, undergraduates, whatnot. They come and they basically come from all over the country and come here for this experience. We do not have any programs that are focused on the kids in the communities around our site, right? So I want to change that, all right? I want to give them the same experience we give it all these other kids, right? And because we're bringing them here from local communities, they're more likely to stay here and enter the workforce here, okay? So that's what we're after. All right, so path to graduate school for undergraduate interns, for summer experiential learning programs. Some of those kids are going to want to go to graduate school. I want them to go to graduate school at Georgia. Sorry. All right. But I want them to go to Georgia. I want them to work for us. All right. So I want to give them a graduate experience on the site where they learn. Working on a DOE site is different, right? It's just different. There's security concerns. There are various concerns about how and when and where and what you do. If you come from the outside and you work there, you're clueless. Our first few weeks or months of a graduate student is retraining them how to think to work on a DOE site. That's valuable because if you get your degree there and you understand that, then hiring you on this site becomes a lot easier because the hard work's done. They already know how it works, right? And then recruitment from local high schools and regional HBCUs. I want to put our outreach program, we already do 400 programs a year. I want to put one of those people in high schools. Get them when they're in high school. Let them know this exists. Talk to them before they ever go to school. Help them go to school, but help them get into this program because if they get into this program, it's going to be some more successful and they got a different future potentially. And addresses increasing executive branch interest. There's a lot of pressure from the executive branch and the agencies to do more with environmental justice. What better way to do it than to do it in the communities that surround the Savannah River site? Okay. Challenges, these are pretty common. Funding environment's always difficult. Long-term stability of SREL. As we get more federal funds, today, our cooperative agreement from EM, the core dollars we get a little over $3 million, right? And then we get some money from other pieces and parts of DOE. Back in 2000, that was 12 million, okay? So we make this work differently now. We make it work differently because we take that core, we take money that we get from other parts and pieces of DOE and we go get other money and we make it all work. But we could use more at the core. And the administrative burden at current staff levels, everybody wears multiple hats. Staff recruitment stability. This is anybody in business out there know how hard it is to get somebody right now. It's the same way in academia. We have such a hard time hiring people. It's not because it's a lovely place to work. It's just that it's hard to get people to work. Additional resources to fulfill the NERC Scholars vision and graduate and undergraduate housing needs, which is something I've been talking about for years. And then one day, long after I'm gone, somebody will fix it, I suspect. So, all right, I think that's all I had. Hope I didn't run over. Thank you, and I'll take any questions.
We'll start over here with John.
John Thomas, CAB. And acronyms, what is BSRA, partners?
Battelle Savannah River Alliance. So the national lab is now run by the Battelle Savannah River Alliance.
Battelle.
Yeah, and so that's Battelle, and then the 5 universities. That's UGA, Georgia Tech, University of South Carolina, Clemson, and South Carolina State.
Okay. And thank you. I've also got HBCU.
Historically Black colleges, universities.
Okay, got it. And then the infrared to find the animals, is that commercially available? Can I get that for my car?
Oh, the FLIR, yeah, it is, but you probably don't want to put that. So what that is really is heat signatures, right? So the military first designed this. So picture an Apache helicopter at night, right? They're using FLIR, right? Their goggles, the night vision goggles, it's all basically the same thing. It's using those heat signatures and light to do it. And so what ours does is it sees those animals out there, and then we're registering where traditional headlights actually pick them up and all that other stuff. So yeah, very expensive, but you could. But you don't want to drive around at night with FLIR on.
Right.
But we've got better ways to solve it. So one of the interesting things is, the reason we're doing this research is that the person that I have on staff that's doing it, he used to work for USDA, and what they did was simply take a light bar and turn it back toward the vehicle, so that when an animal's seeing those headlights, it's not just seeing two big headlights, which it doesn't understand, it sees the front of the vehicle. And when they did that study there, turned out no deer ran in the road. Every deer turned and ran away, because they all of a sudden knew what's coming at them was a vehicle, right? We haven't had the same success so far, right? But there's some differences in our study and theirs, and we're going to keep working on it. But we're hoping what we're going to figure out is some way to get that animal to understand that what's coming at it is something it needs to get out of the way of and not panic.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I put deer whistles on our cars, so I don't know if they're working or not, but
I can tell you they're not working. Yeah,
I haven't hit a deer yet.
I can tell you. Well, no. Force me
Right,
with
right.
you.
Well, thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We'll come around and we'll grab you, Bear.
Hubert Von Toul, CAB. Dr. Rhodes, thank you for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
I was wondering how the lab is approaching the upcoming landlord change in terms of how you plan to work with that.
Sure. So what's happening? So what's going to happen to the lab is that we are moving over. Our cooperative agreement will move over to NNSA. So we're considered part of the landlord services. So that's been decided. What's supposed to happen is the budget so in our 5-year agreement, there's projected budget numbers. That money's supposed to be moved from EM to NNSA to support us. I've been assured by their leadership and by their budget folks that's going to happen. What I'm not clear about yet is whether the cooperative agreement will just be held like it is or be changed to some other instrument. I'm pretty sure it's going to be held like it is, and then when it comes up for renewal, we'll do it in the NNSA style, right? So if I foresee challenges, it's at that point, because we haven't done that with them before. I feel pretty good about it, in part because some of the folks that are coming over from EM to NNSA have worked with us closely over the years, and we're assuming that they will continue to do so, which means that I'm not going to have to reinvent the wheel. People that already understand what we do and why we're important will be there to work with me. And then the latest news that Michael Michelanis will be coming back to lead is also very, very positive, because Michael was the Assistant Director for Infrastructure and Environmental Stewardship, who we worked with day in and day out for 2 years. So now I know that their leadership is going to have someone who's extremely familiar with us and why we're here. So yes, I feel pretty good about it. Yeah. Thank you.
Juanita?
Good morning, Juanita Campbell, CAB. Thank you so much for the presentation, Dr. Rhodes. It's
Thank you.
deeply appreciated. I learned a lot. I actually have 2 questions for you. How are the secured areas secured, the wildlife areas? How do you keep them secured?
You may have to. I'm trying to see what I said that gave you that impression. So,
Sure. So you were talking about some of the areas where the turtles are, mainly with water.
oh yeah. Okay. So these are areas that have traditionally been post remediation or remediation areas. So for example, you might have a facility that has an open basin where in the past materials were put there, right? Mm-hmm. And they cover it with water and they leave it there until they get around to remediating it completely. So you would have these legacy areas where you still have some residual contaminants. They're not necessarily expected to move anywhere. They're supposed to be secure. So, but part of what we want to see is, are they, right? Are they secure, right? So there's a big difference between something getting out into a bird and a dam breaking in the water going into a stream, right? Yeah. So we're looking at the more minor ecological pathways where these things. And so what we're concerned about is, let's say you jump from the water to the bird. What eats the bird, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we do are scavenging studies. I said, what I mean by that, they're not glamorous, but when something dies out there, what eats it? Okay? So if you have something, a bird, right, that dies, that has contaminants in it, what eats it? I need to know that, because that means that all of a sudden that contaminant might jump from that bird over to something that might end up in our food chain, right? So does that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you.
And my second question is, what, in your opinion, is the future of our wildlife as we continue to develop infrastructure? And I mean, what could this mean for our environment?
Are you talking specifically at the SRS or nationally and globally?
Well, how about we start at SRS and then nationally, globally?
At the SRS, I think given the amount of construction that's planned relative to what we're pulling back, I don't have any concerns there, right? My concerns there are more about watershed stability, and we're actually working with SRPPF, for example, to try and help them understand how to plan that watershed in the future so that it restores its ecological function once they're done. So under those conditions, I feel pretty good about that, right? And other than that, that I know of, no huge expansions of infrastructure. But we have very, very low footprint relative to site area, right? So we're probably like 15% built infrastructure. That's better than anything we got around us, right? So I feel pretty good about the site. You move outside of the site, you move to the rest of the country, yeah, there are concerns, right? There are concerns because as we move forward and we continue to build and take away natural areas, we do impact wildlife. We do impact wildlife's ability to survive, and we impact wildlife's ability to continue to sustain, right, the ecological processes that are important to us. So there's always that conservation concern, and it has to do with lots of things. Part of what gives me some hope is that we're getting better about remediation, right? So we're getting better about mitigation. If I build this, I got to build something else over here for the wildlife, right? We do that with wetlands, right? And I think we'll get better about doing that with other types of infrastructure as we go forward. But it is a concern, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Phyllis.
Phyllis Britt, Cab. I have a couple of questions as well. The first one is very personal. Will all of this result someday in deer figuring out not to run into the side of my car? That was my question.
204 collisions. They ran into the side of the car.
I'm not sure. I cannot answer that question under duress. No.
Okay, and my next question is, I know we have deer hunts every year. Do y'all keep track of numbers as far as what does the deer population look like on site? Is it growing alarmingly, or?
So the Forest Service manages that now. So it used to be that back when I was here in the 90s, for example, the ecology lab, I worked many a deer hunt, right? And so we used to do all that. We don't do that anymore. The Forest Service does, but the Forest Service does track the numbers. I don't know whether they're doing population models associated with those. Mm-hmm. They have done research which suggests that the deer population is not growing rapidly, and that they think that could have a lot of different reasons for that. I mean, if you manage the deer population through harvest, usually if you reach some sweet spot with the harvest numbers, you can keep the population at a given number. We also have concerns with coyotes here. And coyotes, there's concerns about coyotes and fawn mortality. So there are a lot of different opinions on how that impacts the population. So I think from some people's perspective, it's more of an issue is the population sustaining itself? But I think it is, but I don't have access to I can get those numbers, but we're not working with them right now.
Gotcha. Okay, and maybe y'all could help Woodside. And my final question, near and dear to my heart, is the whole NERP program with disadvantaged communities. How is that going?
Okay.
Where is that going at this point?
Okay, so right now, because we're moving into the switching landlords, 25 will sort of reveal whether or not there was really money in the budget to do it then,
Gotcha.
Right? But in the meantime, we're not waiting. So what we've done is DOE has a capacity building grant program, and we just put in a concept paper on this to that program. And hopefully, if we get invited to do a full proposal, it would get us just enough money to start the undergraduate portion. So we're gonna move forward and see if we can get that on our own. And in the meantime, we'll continue to make those, once the dust settles from this shift, then we'll go back and start making the plea again to, okay, let's do this and do it right.
Is your initial target population high school or undergraduate?
It's going to be, so we're going to do both simultaneously. We're going to go into because we're going to have to start it with undergraduates, right? So we're going to go into these, our partner universities right now are Benedict, South Carolina State, USC Aiken, Augusta University, and Savannah State. Now, the reason those are the one, not broader, is because we have good contacts at all of those right now, right? We probably will grow that, but I anticipate that our first generation of students will come from those universities. And then at the same time, we'll be working with these high school kids to figure out where they're going to go, right? If I had my way, and I may get my way at some point, right? So what we haven't done yet is established a relationship with these universities to try and maybe make resources available to recruit those students into those universities, right?
Right.
So if you really wanted to do it right, the university itself would offer them a scholarship to come be a NERT scholar, right? We'd help set the way to do that, and then we'd get them back into the program. All right, that's step two. If we can get step one to work, which is just recruit them in and get,
Right.
I think the other will come.
And do you have a target college to start with?
Of those?
Or, yeah.
I think all of them. We can work with
Really? All at once? Okay.
We've worked with all of them. I think we can do that. We have good contacts at all of them, and we have. So the reason we have those contacts is because we ran an undergraduate experiential learning program for NSF for about 5 years. It stopped right before COVID, but we still have all those connections in place.
Thank you. Every time you speak, I realize there are so many things I wish I could have done if I could start over.
I'm with you.
Candace.
Candace Cave Cab. You mentioned that your lab provides ecological research support to the area closures. Can you give me some details about that? Is there like certain protocol for different chemicals that you suspect are in the area?
Yes, ma'am. So what we do, we restructured that program 3 years ago so that every 3 years we sit down with DOE and the area closure project folks, and they identify what they think the top priorities for the next few years are going to be. And then we go in and write them proposals that focus exclusively on those problems, right? So, and the reason we do it for 3 years is because we put a student on every one of them, right? And those students then get their degree, they worked on it. So it's usually a problem that's associated with an area they're going to clean up, right? So they're looking at this area and they're going, okay, what's there, right? So we sort of know what's there. How's it ecologically there, right? How's it moving through the food chain? How's it escape? And so we go in and we do that work. And so we do a lot of ecological receptor work where we're looking to see in that environment, what are those animals telling us about what's there and how available it is? And so we do that in some streams where we're looking at the fish and the aquatic insects, some on lands where we're looking at the mammals, the small mammals and things like that, and the birds. And one of the things that we're going to be doing this next round, which starts in 25, which I think is very interesting, is we're starting to do work on PFAS to try and understand where that is on the site, right? There's only a certain number of places where it should be, right? So we're looking at that. And then we're also looking at, can we monitor that better? So one of the studies that we're going to do this next round, starting in 25, is really cool. We're going to put these, they call them DGTs. They're basically membranes that you put in the environment and they sample the water, right, for you. And so you're supposed to be able to look at what's in that DGT and understand how much PFAS or whatever your metal you're working with, right, is there. So we're going to do that, but it's going to be in a cage beside a fish, right? So we can look at the fish, right, and see what it picked up from the environment. We measure the environment, we know what's in the environment, and we know what the DG picked up. So can we reconcile those three things so that instead of going to sampling fish, you can just put this in the environment and say, hey, that's what's there. And we already do that for metals and mercury and other things. So that's going to be, so the reason I tell you that is we also are trying to look for new technologies and get kids involved so that they come out the other end with the ability to go be hired by the national lab or SRNS.
One more question and then a comment. So what type, if any, relationship do you have with your neighbors over at the Aiken County Research Center?
Some. We have worked with them a little bit in the past, but we work with them very much. And I think that has to do more with, I think that has more to do with the differing focus that we have, right? So we don't necessarily work on the same exact kinds of things that they do, but not a lot.
Oh, and my comment, I guess, is in line with my peers on the cab. When you were talking about the deer and the lights, I was like, oh, so one day we might have roadkill deterrent lights on our cars? That's my hope anyway.
We're looking for it. Yes, that's what we're looking for.
All right. And then, Shada, if you'll finish it up for us.
Hello, Dr. Rhodes. Nice to meet you. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
I have a few questions. I'm curious about your AI and machine learning modeling and statistics experts. What type of projects are you working on?
Okay.
Thinking about?
Yeah, so the one that we hired was part of a joint venture with the College of Veterinary Medicine at UGA. And this person that we're bringing in, so what she's going to work on is disease epidemiology and outbreaks. So she's worked with Ebola, she's worked with COVID, she's worked with all those kinds of things. So her skill sets were developed there, but her background's in ecology, right? So she's going to be able to bring all these cool techniques that she uses for disease modeling and work with us on other kinds of things, right? And so one good example is we're putting a proposal together right now to compete for funds to do low-dose radiation work. So we have the ability to do low-dose radiation exposures for fish. And so what happens when you do that is we look at the metabolomics and we look at their genome, their proteins, their fat, their byproducts of metabolism, all these things, and you generate unbelievable amounts of data. And so we're trying to work with her to see how we can process those data simultaneously with the machine learning approaches to actually get something out of it that's not being gotten out right now. So basically, she'll be doing a lot of disease modeling, but she'll be also moonlighting with the rest of us ecologists doing all kinds of cool things like that.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have a few more questions.
Sure.
With the epigenetics experts, like, are you looking at the epigenetics in the species around the Savannah Riverside as well as the people?
No. So what we're doing right now is two things. Well, three things. So one is long-lived organisms and contaminants. So we're doing some epigenetic work with alligators because we're interested in the point in their life stage where some of these contaminants actually create issues. And epigenetics can be used to build what we call a biological clock, right? So we developed that biological clock from Medaka, which is one of the species who worked with low-dose radiation. So cool enough, you can take these Medaka, right? And so they're not very big and they don't live a long time. So we can sample them across this age spectrum. And with epigenetics, we can get them their age within a week or so, right? Without just going in and take a sample of the fish and we know how old it is, right? We can do that with alligators. We can do that with humans. We can do that with all kinds of things. So from our perspective, that is a really interesting tool because if you now take those animals and you look at how contaminants they are exposed to contaminants, we can determine whether biological aging is accelerated, right? And the reason I'm interested in that is, so for lots of reasons, but one is we already know folks that go up in space because of cosmic radiation, they age faster than we do, all right? And one of the reasons is because it changes their epigenetics, right? It changes their DNA methylation. So we know that exposure to certain kinds of things like radiation or other chemicals changes the rate at which you age, which means that two people, I could be standing beside somebody, we could be exactly to the day the same age chronologically, but biologically, I, of course, would be in much, much better shape, right, than they would, right? So, but the bottom line is, that has to do with how fast we age, right? And some of what we're interested in is if I put an animal in an environment with heavy metals, and they're exposed to those when they're really young, does that mean they age faster, right? And if they age faster, does it mean they die sooner, right? And do they have disease quicker and all those kinds of things? So that's mostly where we're living in the epigenetic side, is understanding how contaminants affect the rate at which an organism ages.
Are you looking at, it's like kind of like a longitudinal study? Are you also looking at their like descendants?
Yes,
How it affects them?
we are with the fish, which is actually really cool, yeah.
So I'm curious if there are like any updates on the solar farm.
Not that I'm aware of. That my folks have talked to them. There was a meeting the other day, but I don't have those details.
Okay, thank you. And then for the enhanced biomonitoring technologies, you mentioned like things like affecting our food supply. Is there an interest in looking at pollinators and how they go out and forage on the Savannah Riverside and kind of the impact of that?
Did you say pollinators or alligators?
Pollinators.
Yeah, I'm very interested in pollinators, but we just haven't gotten any traction yet on how to do that. So I'm hoping that as we work with the Forest Service to do more watershed level planning, they go out and they put pollinator patches, right, when they do this now. What I want to do is understand how the surrounding landscape affects the use of those patches. So for example, see all these circles on the floor, right? If you look at this circle, it's surrounded by these things, right? So that are different. And I don't know that if I put a pollinator patch here, does it matter whether these habitats around it have certain attributes or not? So if you put that circle there and it looked like the ones around it, would pollinators use it? So we have the ability at Savannah Riverside to actually look at the entire landscape, figure out where you put these things, and see how they attract pollinators. So from my perspective, I'm interested in trying to enhance how we design pollinator habitat. Now, the closest we've gotten to the contaminant side of that are the insects, right, which are the mosquitoes. Interestingly enough, the person that I hired to work on mosquitoes is a mosquito ecologist who works on mosquito pollination on the side, right? So, because there are a lot of plants that are pollinated by mosquitoes.
It's very cool. I have another question about that new initiative, that device you have that you mentioned was 700,000 and you put in, you identify if there are contaminants inside of it. And I'm curious, like, how do you continue to reuse that device, and does it like contaminate other items that you put in it?
It doesn't, not the way, so what you're doing basically is if you're using a radionuclide contaminated sample in the device, it doesn't really contaminate the device, but there's potential it could, right? And then once you do that, you have to pretend it's contaminated, right? Just in case. And so, but the samples themselves and the containers in these samples and some of the pathways like the plastic tubing, they do get contaminated. And so they have to be replaced. And they have to all be treated as radioactive waste. But that machine can be used over and over and over and over and over again, right? It's not, the samples themselves aren't hurting it. It's just that when you get ready to dispose of it, it has to be treated as if it were contaminated. And it might be, right? Because there's the potential it could have been.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
And the last one is just a suggestion. I love that you guys are recruiting within the local and regional for high school students and HBCU students. I think that because there's a challenge with recruitment, perhaps like expanding the pool.
We probably will, yeah.
Okay.
Well, and so both USC Aiken and Augusta University are in there, and one of the reasons they are is because we've worked with them in the past, and they really do have a lot of underserved communities as part of their undergrads, right? So as we start the program, we're probably going to expand pretty quickly.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Dr. Rhodes, thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Our next presenter is teed up and ready to go, but I warned him that you folks may want 10. Do y'all need a 10-minute break? All right, let's take 10 minutes and we will be back at 10:20. Thank you, everyone. 10:20. All right, everyone, let's find our seats. It's time to get started. It's actually past time. Let's bring it in. So this next presentation is about the site cybersecurity program. We know that there were some board member questions about cybersecurity a few months back. We've been working on getting this on the schedule, getting Luan in here. And I know that you probably have some other questions, maybe even related to this draft recommendation you'll be voting on later in the day. He's prepared to talk to it a little bit if you do have some questions within what's possible, okay? But with that, I'm gonna get out of the way and just let Luan go.
Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Lewan Belton, not Edwin John. Just to make sure. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Lewan Belton. I'm the Director of Cyber Information Technology Division at Savannah Riverside, and also the Chief Information Officer. As you know, I have many bosses. Mr. Button is one of them. So all the AMs, Assistant Manager at Savannah Riverside, along with security, I get a lot of phone calls. So that's not what really keeps me up at night. It's the cybersecurity. So everyone, I'm pretty sure, has a cell phone. Some people has the iWatches, your car, your thermostat at home. Everything's connected these days. And so when you think about cybersecurity, I'm going to talk briefly overall about cybersecurity, how it relates to Savannah Riverside, but also how it can impact you at home. Everything you do at home is the same challenges we have at Savannah Riverside, but we have it at a different level because of the materials that we're trying to protect, the processes that we're trying to run out in gym shops, and the environment we're trying to protect also. So just keep that in mind. So when I look at these areas, I'm gonna highly define what is cybersecurity, what keeps me up at night, the challenges, the capabilities, and we have partnerships with public and private sectors in order to ensure that we're able to do our job. And then lastly, those great questions and open discussions I know we're gonna have concerning this. So this is my head. I'm one of those quirky guys. I'm an engineer by degree, but I like colors. I like pictures, and I like thinking outside the box. So when I think of cybersecurity and physical security, you come into mind, hey, guns, gates, and guards. But when you look at computers, devices, we have the same type of rigor from a cybersecurity. And if you think about it, that is where the new war is happening. It is coming from the computers, the networks, the devices. Just like your phones right now could have a piece of malware on it. And that malware can be used as a microphone. Those are concerns that I'm always faced with when looking at technologies or new things like AI within the environments at Savannah Riverside. So when you think about cybersecurity, I said it briefly, computers, networks, devices. Now, when you look at it, wrap that around CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability of those systems. That is the cybersecurity that we have. That's what we got to protect because of the information to ensure that the safety and security at site is paramount. Now, just like with anything else, everyone likes trends and tracks, so we have to show some of ours too. But as you can see here, malware, these terms that are used on the left-hand side, we're gonna go over those briefly at a very high level, and we're gonna show you how some of these things are not just impacting Savannah Riverside, but also the public industry. So you can see malware, you hear the term DDoS attack, you hear the term phishing, you hear a term called smishing, which is not up there, which is text messaging that I'm pretty sure everyone is receiving. Oh, UPS package is out there. Could you go and click this link? Click the link, you're compromised. Email, the Valentine's Day's coming. That significant sent me that flower. I'll click the link, you're compromised. Or you get a phone call. Oh, Mr. Button called me and said, hey, Ms. Lewan, is this Lewan? And you say yes, you could be compromised. So you gotta be careful how you answer questions and how you relate to these types of matters. Top trends, and then you look at 5 in the industry. Right now, as you can see, surprisingly, energy is at the bottom. That doesn't mean that it's not happened. Maybe we just haven't been reported. But as you can see, healthcare is one of those areas that everyone is attacking because that's something that you need. These devices are being connected. People are paying ransomware money out because of I'm on the operating table. I need to get access to that information. Police departments getting hacked. It happens everywhere. So no one is immune to cybersecurity. So what keeps me up at night? these terms. It's not my kids, not anymore. Before it was. It's not Mr. Budney having a phone sleep inside the bed because when something happens, I got to call him or call my boss. It's not those things. But these terms here kind of keep me up at night, but not so much because we have a great team at Savannah River Site. SRMC, SRNS, BSRA, Centera, all these the acronym games that we have within DOE-SR. But that being said, I want to talk briefly about some of these types of things that we have at Savannah River Site and also how it impacts you guys at home. So, of course, a data breach, there's a leak, a spillage, sensitive information, confidential information. It can be PII data. I'm pretty sure if you're in the state of South Carolina from years ago, everyone got, the free monitoring tools because, South Carolina got hacked. And as a result of that, we got monitoring for like 3 years. But just like with anything else, these breaches happen across all avenues. You have a piece of asset or information or data that you're trying to get to, and someone want to access, that is a data breach. Is when they're accessing that data. It could be a unpatched system, or it could be something that you have an iPhone, iPad that needs an update that you haven't done yet. So please do those. I know I try to tell my wife, please update your phone. Well, I update the phones because I don't want to be compromised or attacked because of my position. Now, DDoS. When you think about DDoS, I'm going to actually show you a picture in a second. But these are a set of servers, computers, but it's the adversary using one device to attack multiple devices, then overloading the system to close that door. But in some cases, like we look out in mission support or out in Jim Folks' organization, there are processes from a process standpoint that requires the things to fail open. So same thing, if I hit attacking the system and it fails open, now what can happen to that tank waste? So those are things that I'm concerned about on the OT side, operational technology, to ensure that the mission is being met. So here's my attacker. I'm gonna call my attacker John. So John is over here on this side, and he's using a system. And from that system, he sends out that command out to these 4 or 5 computers here. It could be a bot, just a piece of code. Because that bot, though, it sends it out to one server to the point where it shuts it down. If you're gonna think about many years ago when they, I think healthcare.gov, everyone was trying to access the website. It's the same type of premise. Everyone trying to access it, they couldn't get access, it shut down. Same thing from an attack standpoint. If I know I can attack in a website, and then when I bring it back up, I can have my, what I call sleeper cell, included within the code. So there's ways that an attacker are using techniques, and you may hear me say this in terms, TTP or tactics, techniques, and procedures. That is how they're using it. We know there's a holiday coming up, many people are gonna be at Savannah River Site. So that's the perfect time to attack. That's what happened with the SolarWinds back in December a couple of years ago, WannaCry. Those are the types of things that people are in the environment are just waiting for the right time. So phishing. Everyone has probably heard of phishing, not with a rod and reel, and not with hooks. Some people here got a problem with hooks. I'm not gonna say any names, but not with hooks. But phishing is an email. I sent out an email message to Miss Bryant over there, Bryant, and then next thing you know, she clicked on it. Or I sent out an email message to this person, or I sent out a text message. Smishing and phishing is very similar. And sometimes it comes from a person that you know. But as you click on the email, it downloads a payload. And as a result of that, now you're compromised. So that happens quite a bit. Or there's a term from a website. You go to a website, I call it just like you have, unfortunately, in certain places, have a drive-by. You go to a website just by mistake, I type in the wrong name. You type in Bank of America, or you misspell Bank of America. I have a problem, I'm an engineer, I misspell things a lot. Go to the wrong website, downloads a payload. So that has happened. And to be honest with you, to be totally transparent, it's happened to me once. And only because I was trying to do something for my team member, he was retiring. I'm like one of those guys that like do crazy presentations, do funny stuff. So I'm searching for pictures online for him. I click on a picture, my camera comes on, takes a picture of me. And it shows up on the web page, my picture with Interpol, the president pointing at me saying I did something wrong. Now, for me, at first, I shut the computer down. I said, wait a minute, it's just a bug. It's no big deal. I'm an engineer, I can figure this stuff out. Turn it back on, I go in and erase the bug. But most people don't understand that type of thing, but it happens. So these are just some examples. So you look at the first one, you know, if you get this at work and you see something that says FaceTime verification, you know, as far as like, we don't use FaceTime in this manner, but some people click this. My kids probably click it because they're nosy, but it will click for verification, or you may see something like this. This is very legitimate, right? But if you look at the heading here, foreign species of spiders. Now, that was kind of pertinent for Dr. Rose. We may have some foreign species because of the regulation levels and stuff at the Savannah River site. Just kidding. I forgot we're on camera. I can't say those things. But the problem is, you know, when you go and look at these websites, you got to look for the different terms. You know, this to me is kind of suspicious from the beginning. But then a lot of time, people are going to click read me. Click the button, then we get the artifacts, even though this was a phishing campaign where we purposely put something out here like this because we want to catch someone like an Avery, see if she's really know and she had the training. I'm just kidding, we're not. But we have our repeat offenders, and then we have to go back through and train them on why you shouldn't do those things. Malware, everyone knows about malware, everybody heard about ransomware, and I've talked about malware at a very high level already, and it's for the most part, it's in some cases a bad code used to wreak havoc within an environment. And it can be delivered many different ways, ads, email links. So many different ways they can do it. Try to steal money, or you try to disrupt business as usual. So one of the most popular ones that people knows about is ransomware. Everyone hears about ransomware. Okay, you know, the state of South Carolina got attacked. Augusta University potentially got attacked. You know, you have police departments that got attacked. You got hospitals that got attacked. You know, so it's interesting when I go to different forums, when I talk to these industries, they don't want to reveal that information. And so they end up paying the Bitcoins to hide that they've done that. And which in reality, from a cybersecurity standpoint, the government, well, I ain't gonna talk from Mr. Button, but the government doesn't like to pay for it because it's not a guarantee that they're gonna release your information. So it's better in some cases to have the right equipment to rebuild and have the right backups. But the concern is the backups could also be compromised. So as you can see here, botnets talked about that. Spyware is, you know, spyware and adware. So a lot of people have adwares that pops up. You know, this ad, you've been out searching for this latest purse or this car, and these cookies have been deposited within your browser. Now I use those adware to connect in and say, hey, what's John like? He likes these types of cars. Also, let's start popping these things. Or you're talking around, and for some reason, because you've got to turn these apps, these certain permissions on your phone off, now why is this certain dress is showing up? I ain't saying anything about a dress. Or this certain TV show. Everyone is listening. And there's, of course, no one reads the privacy announcement when they download the apps because it's so long. But you really read it. If you read those things, there's certain things you can turn off. And so these are ways that an adversary can get into these devices. Adware, it could be spyware, botnets, Trojans, worms. And all these things are just tactics used by an adversary. Now, I'll talk about ransomware kind of a little bit. The WannaCry, I don't know if you guys heard about the WannaCry back in 2017. And this really happened because of Microsoft had they had a unpatched zero-day vulnerability out there. And they had sent it out to the different organizations. The larger organization went out and patched it, but some of the smaller groups forgot to do it. Or they didn't do it in time. And so in this actually the device, the code was created by a government agency. I'm not gonna say the agency name. And the organization went in and stole it. And went in and stole it, and they exploited it before Microsoft could get the patch out. So since I'm being on TV, I'm not gonna say the agency, just say agency, other agency, and you're gonna look it up for yourself. I don't like saying those terms, especially with my name associated with it. But it has happened. These are things that sometimes, you may not see this though. If you get hacked within your environment, this may not come up. But your computer may start doing something differently. or if you go out of the country, and as you go out of the country, your device may be compromised. And to remember, from a cyber standpoint, if you're out of the country, you have no sense of privacy whatsoever. Going overseas, connecting to the environments. A lot of times, I tell people that come to me is, if you had to do it, go out to Walmart and buy a burner phone. I wouldn't access my bank accounts because that information, anything you access through that environment, someone else can look at all that data. And in some of the cases where people can actually modify your laptop, your computer, and that has happened. I'm not going to go into details because of the incident, but that's happening within the government, within DOE, and it can happen to you. But what I'm showing on this slide is just because you're being hacked here, you may not have an indicator like this. Removing media. Everyone, this is one of the challenges we've always had at Savannah Riverside. We have done a really good job of trying to minimize this, CD-ROMs, thumb drives, old tape drives. You have the 5 1/4 disc, those types of things. You'd be surprised that we still use some of those things at Savannah Riverside. Because of the technology that's out there and because of some of the legacy systems, we still have to use those types of equipment. So we have security put around those areas, and we make sure that certain access is not, accessible. So we may have things on secondary networks and that type of thing. So I'm pretty sure everyone knows all these devices, right? This is kind of old, the 5 1/4. Even I know I'm a young guy, but I know the 5 1/4. I mean, in middle school, when I was programming in Apple, we used these type of devices. What I don't see is the big tape drives and stuff. Oh, there goes some there. But this right here, at site, we'll go around and drop a thumb drive on the ground, or well, most of our computers now don't have CD-ROMs in them anymore. We purposely took those. Well, we didn't purposely. The technology changed, but a thumb drive still is a major problem. And if you think about the attack that happened overseas, what is it? Iraq, dealing with it was with a thumb drive. They use a thumb drive in order to take down their reactor and slow it down. So these are things that are being utilized out there in the environment that may come up, even at home. So, like for my kids, I'm going to a conference. For me, I don't connect to any of the chargers stations because there was at the cybersecurity conference many years ago, IG came out and did a study and noticed that company that had that charging station out was pulling information off. So I plug into the wall, or I have my external battery. I don't connect to networks here in the hotel. I don't do that. I connect to my phone. That's just me. I know I can be paranoid, but what I'm trying to do is minimize that Amy and Mr. Budney is not getting a phone call and being on the news saying, hey, why did we get breached at Savannah Riverside? They look good. So it's for them to have that discussion, not me. But that is a concern. That is a concern. So these are good practices that you really need to think about, not just at Savannah Riverside, but at home too. Supply chain is a major, major, major concern for us at Savannah Riverside. Supply chain management. And what this is doing, especially when you have big production reactors, processes that's out there, and we have companies that we invested in for years, and the company that's been there for 5 years get bought up by another company, or you have hardware out there that has chips on it that's been manufactured by a third party that's from another country. And from those chips, a malware is being loaded on it, and information is automatically taken off site, and you don't know anything about it. This is one of the biggest risks that we have right now. And so for us, counterintelligence helps us through our governance process. They review these companies, and they make certain that, hey, how can we reduce that? We can't stop it because, unfortunately, the government likes to get the best value. That's the right way to say it from a contract, best value contract. So we like to save money, but cheap is not always the best option. And some of those cases, unfortunately, it's not genuine products. And as you go and try to go after the small business credits, and sometimes, unfortunately, companies take shortcuts. And as they take shortcuts, there's certain types of equipment that may be embedded that may not be foreign, or maybe foreign to that particular company, or foreign to the United States. So this is what I think about. All right, the cloud. Everyone knows about the cloud, right? The cloud. Everything's in the cloud. You know, my email's in the cloud. My pictures I take is in the cloud. All my things that connect to the car is connected to the cloud. You know, as I connect in my phone into my car, that information is stored to the cloud. You know, all those things, everything's cloud. Cloud is great. You know, from my IT side, I like the cloud. Now on the cybersecurity side, there's some things I could be concerned about concerning the cloud. So for us at Savannah Riverside, we like FedRAMP is a term that we use because we have networks that we can use, infrastructure as a service. We have software that we can access, software as a service, and it also has platforms, applications. So there's 3 types of clouds that we use at Savannah Riverside. And when we cannot have a FedRAMP cloud, we go through a process at Savannah Riverside to ensure the integrity of that information and the process for securing that information is met. And then also, the last step in that process is the AO. Mr. Butney has to sign off on it from a risk standpoint. So Mr. Butney is the only person from Savannah Riverside on the cybersecurity that can set risk. So if SRNS or SRMC, if you're in the room, I cannot sign off on risk, only Mr. Butney. So if something happens, it's Mr. Butney responsibility, okay? So he'll be the first one. You know, I still got young kids that I take to send to school, so Mr. Butney would be the one. Just want to make sure that's Mr. Butney, not Lee One Belton. Just want to make sure. So he's the one that accepts all risks on the EM side. And it's one of those things, we have a meeting with him, I think we had one last week. It's an hour and a half meeting, and we talk about all the risk at a level to the point where it's aggregated risk, and we actually go into some of this discussion where it's classified because of the information that we have on site. And so those are the 3, I was talking about software as a service, platforms as a service, and iOS as a service. So our capabilities that we have. Okay, so on the capabilities. Now, I purposely did not put down the technologies here. We have been through a lot of reviews at Savannah Riverside from the IG, from external inspectors, because if I put out how we do business, and especially in this form, an adversary may get those techniques and try to figure out a way to get into our environment. So automated threat detection. So we have systems set up so that it would send me a message. It would send me a message that, hey, that this person's sending out all this type of data at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's things that does different. Or if this person decide, say 2 gigs of data is going off, this person's about to leave. You know, we have technology in place. We can do forensics analysis. I can search wherever you've been on site. I know if you logged in the office from home. I know where you logged in from. I know if you're out of the country trying to get into the network. And also, a lot of times when I call people when they're out of the country, we try to make certain that, hey, you have certain things in place. That's a little jab at someone. I'm not going to say any names. But what I'm saying is we have capabilities and we have partnerships with the FBI, the IG, and also the Inspector General to make certain that when something like this does happen at Savannah Riverside, we're on the board. Just like right now, we have a case that we're working on dealing with insider threat. That is another area. So within my organization, I have IT, which deals with mostly business systems, networks, backbone. Then I have cybersecurity that deals with protection. I have technical security that deals with the signals that come in and out of the houses, of the room. So if there's bugs, you heard the term bugs as in a room, I have a group that looks for that. Then also I have information security that looks at classified information, how the protection of CUI and classified and that distinction. So all these things are made up. We have a committee that works on together to make sure that these things are protected. So you look at intrusion detection, just like at home when you're trying to come an alarm system. We had those same things in the network of our environment. As someone or some device actually traverse our network and they start doing something kind of strange, we have artifacts in the past that's just kind of like machine learning and artificial intelligence that baked into our environment that throws up flags. Hey, you need to go look at this. And you can actually build automation into it that actually will shut down certain processes because of that. Forensics analysis, we do forensic analysis quite a bit because of, unfortunately, it happens. Just like Savannah Riverside, we're not immune to pornography, we're not immune to gambling websites. Those things happen. And my team is the team that was responsible for going out and looking at those things. So just say, for instance, Avery. I'm gonna use this just an example, Avery. So they say Avery became a disgruntled employee that she didn't like General Mack anymore, and I'm like, okay. She started sending out these messages. She started posting stuff online about this, you know, and then just so happened that John Clark said, hey, Avery's acting strange today. I go look at her data as a federal employee because the investigation has started. And then we work with CI and IG office with that. So that is some of the tools that we have. Penetration testing, just like with anything else, if the hackers can do it, we should be able to do it. So we try to attack our own systems of vulnerabilities to find the holes or patch the holes. It's better for us or our external partner, our friends in headquarters, to find the hole versus an adversary. So if the adversary find the hole, they're gonna exploit us, and then next time we're on the news and say, hey, could you give us $1 million? You know our budgets ain't big like Jim Folks. So we're gonna ask for $1 million. We don't have that kind of money in cybersecurity. Yeah, our budget is small, but we're mighty. And so, but we work together as a team to ensure that those things are met. And then disaster recovery, just like when anything happened, we had to test that. You know, God forbid when it does happen, it's gonna happen, I hate to say it, and it has happened in the past. You get attacked, how do you handle the attack? So we test that, we practice it. We partner with the Cyber Protection Brigade in Fort Gordon and other organizations to make certain that if it does happen, we have teams available that can shepherd us through that process, but also we as an organization can also meet those requirements. And then this other stuff we have, you know, the great stuff I know that everyone in the government loves is policy. We have policy compliance, just like anything else. We have NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, that pretty much a guideline say these are the things that you have to have. System, General Site Service System. These are requirements, all the controls that you have to meet. Just like your home computer has, in some cases, a, what's the thing to come up? Your screensaver. Screensaver comes out after 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes. That is a control, actually. Your password is 15 for us, 21 characters, 15 characters. That is a control. And so those things are put in place for that reason. If I access a site network and then access our guest network, there's a control to keep those things separate. All those things are regulated by NIST. And then also we have orders, deal with cybersecurity order, along with our great friend, the mandates that comes down from headquarters. We thank you so much. Our mandates that come down, and unfortunately, a lot of those are unfunded. But we work through that process with our partners, with the contractor, and our senior manager to make sure those things are happening. Awareness on cybersecurity awareness training, just like it's kind of like somewhat is training right now. We do that quite a bit on site, and with the phishing attacks, phishing campaigns. God, it sounds bad, phishing attack. Phishing campaigns in October, and also we have cybersecurity special training, and we have 2 of them. I'm pretty sure General Mack loved those 2 cybersecurity training classes, the one from headquarters and the one from site that we had to do. Because I know I got a lot of email messages from him when I was on vacation. Yeah. And also secure configuration management. That is one of the biggest areas, just like with anything else, like your car. You keep your car maintenance. You get the oil changed, you get the tires checked. Same thing with the network. You patch the systems. You make sure that there's people that should not have access to people that has expired credentials. Get them off your network. Same thing here. External partners, I'll talk about, it's hard for me to say Fort Eisenhower, I still say Fort Gordon. CPT team, Cyber Protection Brigade, it was almost a year adventure for us. We went through and went all the way up to Fort Meade and have a partnership with them. We've had that for 3 to 5 years. So for us at Savannah Riverside, what's different about us, we have OT, here, Internal Operating Technology, the SCADAs, the industrial control systems, the distributed control system. Those are the types of systems that runs our missions, SWPF, DLPF, and those types of things. That organization, Cyber Protection Brigade, they're really good at hunting. They can hunt, from a cybersecurity, they can attack the adversary, but they didn't have any expertise in ICS environment. So we partner together. They come train us on how to hunt, and we train them on ICS and SCADAs. To me, that is the way how you should do. We're right across the river from each other. We're in a partnership. FBI, unfortunately, we spend a lot of time with them too. And we also have what we call we have a special briefing, very low and very, very high clearance level. And we talk about the attackers and how they're attacking, what countries, how it's been happening, who's been attacked. So we have a 3-group a three-party group with IGCI, IG, and then also NSA actually comes over too. And we talk about how these people are doing it. And we have our cyber professionals in the room along with our CISA admins that had the right level. CISA, along with Center of Inference, NIST, I talked about NIST already, Georgia Cyber Center. We have partnership right there with University of South Carolina, University of Georgia, because we know we need a pipeline. So we partner with Augusta University, USC Aiken. We do things with USC Columbia. I'm a Gamecock, so that sounds great. Dr. Rose gone now, right? Georgia, USC Columbia, Gamecock. So we do a lot of things with them. Aiken Tech, along with, of course, that's Georgia Cyber Center. And our great friends, the FBI. FBI, they help us out with a whole lot. We have some technologies that I can't discuss here that we partner with them on, that we sign some documentation so that we can look external on our environment. As people try to attack us, they can provide us indicators, hey, have you guys looked in this area? Along with what's not here is headquarters. Headquarters is a part of our organization, and they can monitor our network also from headquarters, and they provide us information along with ARC and other groups. Oh, questions? I know I went kind of fast on this, but I just want to expose you to what a day in the life I have at Savannah Riverside. And this is normally happens all the time, especially when technology comes up, challenges happens. I'm faced with those. I talked to Mr. Budney quite a bit, and I explained to him, and he's receptacle of me calling him at 9 o'clock and hey, Mr. Budney, we've got a problem here. Just want to let you give you a heads up, because it's my responsibility to make sure he knows before headquarters calls him. So, questions?
So just so you know that your training is working, my kids have these little walkie-talkies that charge with a USB port, and they asked me, can we charge it? And I said, give me just a minute, and they wanted to go plug it into the computer. And they're like, no. There's a circuit board in there. We don't know where it was made. We don't know what's on that circuit board. We are absolutely not plugging it into a laptop. Yeah. No, ma'am. And so that was a good moment for us to talk about, just because something has a USB plug doesn't mean it's appropriate. Mm-hmm. Just because it can doesn't mean you should. Yeah, but it works. What you're teaching works.
You bring up a good point. And see, that's the thing that I try to instill in everyone. These things pop up all the time. We have, at our site, we don't allow government devices to plug into our laptops. And I get the question, why? Well, first of all, we have open devices, and we have an environment that allows us to use these cell phones quite regularly. But I don't know if, what's your name? Carlos, what apps? Oh, yes, I know exactly apps you download on your phone. Trust me, from a DOE perspective, I know all the apps, and I can take them off. My thing is, before say you download that one app, that special app that you think it's okay. Oh, my battery's running low. I plug it in. Now I'm connected to the network. Now I'm on way in. So those are the things for us. We monitor all that. So supervisor, when you get those phone calls, I'm sorry, but because you got people that's plugging in, and we can tell you exactly if you download anything. It's funny because some years ago we had a gentleman. I'm not gonna say his name. We have I think EM 1 or 2 had came down. He had took pictures. I'm just gonna send the messages to you. He plugged it up. And after he plugged it up, he's downloading the pictures. I called and I said, hey, you're not supposed to do this. You know this environment. He said, Lauren, I know, I'm so sorry, but it's for EM2. I said, hey, you can talk to the manager. I said, I'm not going to be the one that let him know that you violated the rule. And so, but it can happen, though. That's why you have things in place to make sure you're able to monitor that. Yeah.
So we'll just go down the line. We'll start with Sade.
She already quizzed me already. I'm just kidding.
Don't forget your microphone.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Luan.
Yes.
I'm just curious about the number of breaches or incidents that have occurred at the Savannah River site, or is it non-existent?
Oh, non-existent. That's the. If somebody said it non-existent, they'd be lying. I don't care where you go, you will have a breach. You will have. We've in the last year. It's kind of early, so I want to knock on wood. Breaches-wise, we have not had many breaches. We had near misses, where we have someone that has added a device into the environment, or something that had a malware on it that we were able to isolate. Because think about it, with all our computers, all our laptops, and everything that is hooked in, it's had continuous antivirus on. So whenever something is out of date, it gets centralized to a system, and we can isolate and excel that system. So the computer is not so much of a concern for me. I'm more concerned about the back end where the big data is. Now, in that past, we've not had any breaches recently, but we've had things that come down from headquarters. We call it not incident of security concern, concerns concerning IP or certain space where organizations, foreign organizations, that we need to go and search the environment. Or there may be a technology that has been vulnerable, and we know it's vulnerable, that's out there in the environment. And so that's what has been coming up not from a breach, but from a capability that we've been concerned about. The last one that I can discuss, it wasn't really a breach. It was more of a sysadmin taking information home, and so which is more of a policy procedures type of thing. Breaches, well, no, I can't. We had one breach some years ago. I'm not gonna say the company or the name, but it was very small. It wasn't to Savannah Riverside, but it was a third-party company that was working for us, and we had to cut ties to that company so to make sure that they would not infiltrate Savannah Riverside. So when we make those determinations, we had to call the manager. Hey, Mr. Butney, this company has an attack that's happening with their corporate office that has potential connection into our environment. We need to sever ties immediately. So that is just one of the things we do. But breaches-wise, we have not had very limited breaches in my time. I've been here for 20 years. But the breaches that we have had has been very simple in nature. It's more like misconfiguration that's not exfil of data, or a team that's coming in has breached us because they're doing a test. And but as a result of them doing the test, they have modified the data to the point where it's been corrupted. So that has been the biggest concern that we've had from a cyber perspective. Now, we have had during one of those last times where a PII information wasn't breached, but that person took device home. He's a sysadmin, but he had it was encrypted, but there was no need for him to take it home. And so as a result of that, we had to go through the whole process of notifying all those individuals that the drives and stuff was on. So.
Yeah, I'm curious about what your thoughts are and concerns around AI and machine learning, especially for the DOE, and then DOE owned and developed AI and machine.
Good question. Actually, it's funny that you say that. I'm glad I looked. Thank you for saying that to me, and the information on that concerning the recommendation. I think it's a really great recommendation. And we have already started. We have a CIO council that we put together, and we have SRNS is creating a framework already for an AI for policy, but they're also building an engine inside. Along with SRMC, I don't know if anybody SRMC. SRMC has some special things they want to do because dealing with the facilities out there to predict if there's going to be failures or those types of things within that area. So what we're going to be doing is we're working with a national lab. National lab has a special team that's working on AI also. With the CIO council, we have all 4 or 5 of those CIOs that's on the council. You know, you have SRNL, BSRA, and SRMC. Now, of course, Centera, they do things a little differently, but they're on the council also. But with that, along with NNSA, we're developing a process, a policy associated with that. But then also what they're trying to do is, what can we do now internally? Because the lab wants to use AI for a lot of things. I have concerns from the lab because of the type of material, the type of information they are exposed to. And the challenge that I have from my information security side of the house, if they're working in classified information and they ingest it into this tool that we have, now where's the information going to be stored at? It's going to be stored internally? That's great, but now is the system itself on a system that's to the classified level, or is it on an unclassified system? Now you got a spillage issue. You got information on classified that's on an unclassified system. Now there's a whole cleanup process. So keeping those things separated is important. So by creating a not just a policy, a process in the machine, I think it would help that. But the challenge is going to be, how do we make sure that we can make it accurate and that we can continue to create products that these organizations can utilize? It's great to create a new process, but I want to make sure it's being used. And then, so right now, the lab has a lot of data, the environment restoration organization, the watersheds, and you have the Jim Folk and their groups. They have a lot of these data. You know, we have all these great crystal ball tools and stuff that can create all these great models. But just like with anything else, it's how do you use those models? How do you use the information? Because that's the most important part. But we are early emphasis stage of looking at that. We have a meeting this Wednesday with the OCO office, Office of Chief Information Officer headquarters. The AI director is leading that effort, and we got Bruce Page on our team, and our staff is participating on that so we can bring things back to us. But we're really early in that process.
Thank you. I'm curious, I know you mentioned you couldn't provide any particular systems, but I don't know if you can share individually or if there's any that you can share openly as far as like systems that are available to protect our cybersecurity that would have capabilities similar to the ones you listed on slide 22?
It all depends on what capability you're looking for. Yeah. Some of those systems I can discuss, but some of those things I would not discuss because of the sensitivity associated with it. But I have no problem giving you as much information I can that's legal.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
All right. Candace?
I think you answered some of the Candace Cave Cab. You answered some of my questions about the AI. So let's back up a little bit. So is cybersecurity, I'm sure, is a big part of orientation and onboarding for your staff.
Yep. Yes,
Does that apply to your contractors as well?
yes. Everyone on site is required to do a cybersecurity training. It was actually in November. I started in October. And it was just got to have it. So if you haven't finished your, one that's listening, you haven't finished your cyber training, you have 2 more days, one more day. Tomorrow you got to be done. If not, your account, actually, the account's being shut off.
Oh, wow.
We're starting this process right now. Yeah, because my thing, I spoke to the other Edwin, John, the other Edwin, because I talked to him, and because we have, on the contractor side, if you haven't completed your cybersecurity training, which is mandatory, your safeguard security training, and your CAT training, we shut the accounts off. So my thing is, if you haven't done the training, we're serious about that because it will one breach away of being on the national news. And so we take that very seriously. And we get audited for our cybersecurity program. When a victim comes in, that is one of the pillars that they have to look at. What's your awareness program? What types of information in that cybersecurity? And have, Candace, have you done your cybersecurity? They can pull that up. All the information is readily available to any kind of external audit team.
So I guess when the site's vetting contractors and things like that, cybersecurity is a part of that vetting process as well.
Yes. So thank you. Thank you for bringing it up. God, you good. So we have an IT governance process. And on the governance process, we have contracts, we have the supply chain management, we have IG, we have physical security, technical security, almost any organization you can think about. So as we go through a new technology, a new adventure, AI or something for tank waste or a new technology, whatever it may be, CI has to go and look at it. Technical security has to go look at it. And we go through a process, we document any kind of issues that may be associated with it. So for instance, there may be a product out there that looks great. EMS, the emergency management, not emergency, the ambulances. This one we did for Mr. Budney some years ago, where this is the only company that can provide that service to meet a certain requirement for the state of South Carolina. And at that time, Mr. Budney, we had explained to him that, hey, we're going through the process, this cab, the CI has said that, well, maybe some issues here, but it's very low risk. But when I said low risk is good. Low risk is good. But, it's all about, okay, if you're in an ambulance, you come to the state line, to our site line, do I stop there or do I continue? So these are decisions that we have to make from a software standpoint. So now, but that software now has been FedRAMP, which we like. And now we have the extra pedigree, that's the stamp of approval that, hey, this company is great. It met these requirements, third party meets these requirements, we're good to go. We go through that for a lot of our technology. And then now, as a result of that, we put a clause in the contracts that every 3 to 5 years, they had to go back and make certain that that company hasn't changed hands. Because, company A has been bought by company B. Now company B is a foreign entity. That has happened. And the challenge with anything else is when that happens from a supply chain, I can't go rip it out of my environment. especially from a process standpoint, is out throughout total our whole site. As many companies are being utilized, is very expensive and very risky because as you go and rip it out, other thing breaks, especially when you're looking at legacy systems that are old.
Thank you.
Okay, Phyllis?
Phyllis Britt, Cab. Thank you for your presentation. I'm always interested in this because I have a worry wart in my house who frets about a lot of that stuff. But number one, if you're dealing with a community that is dealing with classified information, why isn't number one that nobody can have a laptop? I mean, if you have a desktop, you're not taking it home.
Well, yes, that is a great question. That's a great question. The thing about for us though, when we talk about classified is on a separate whole network itself, and it's not on a laptop. So the classified we're talking about, we have thin clients, is what we call a dumb terminal. That's pretty much connects to an environment on the back end. So there's no information that is stored on that device. It's talking to a system that's being monitored, actually locked up in a box. So that's different. Now, a laptop is only for us used for unclassified processing. Now there are some instances where, just say other sites. Now, I say Savannah Riverside, we don't do these types of things. Just say headquarters decided to send us a message, and it may be, unfortunately, it came from a different site, and it has classified information in it that didn't go through their review process for public release, and they didn't classify it appropriately. And it comes to our site. Now it's on an unclassified email system that someone has downloaded to the computer, and that person decided to change the name. They sent it out to everyone in their family. Everyone on site, not outside of their family. That happens. And so forensics and everything else, we follow the breadcrumbs to figure out where it's at, and we had to go clean it up.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the thing that came to mind was that several years ago at Los Alamos, when the guy walked home with a laptop and then shared it with China or someplace, I don't remember.
But that's a great example of where, we get all kind of help when other sites do those great things. Because as soon as that happened, we had to go and reevaluate our systems.
Then my second question is not particularly SRS related. The worry ward in my house will not e-file with the IRS because it's a third party. It's not the IRS.
Yeah.
And now we're getting ready to be required to e-file.
Yeah.
How do we protect ourselves?
Trust the e-file company. My thing is, I do it all the time. It's one of those risks I'm willing to accept because it's really the liabilities on them. Many people have my social security number already anyway. From the
Well,
previous.
that is true. You're right.
But my thing is, you got to rely on the company that have put the security in place on the back end. And these types of company has some of the highest security, but just like with anyone else, there can always be a bug and always be an insider. There's always something that could happen.
Right.
I don't worry about that much. Just like my Bank of America or my USAA, I do banking all the time.
Right.
And I'm the main one. I use my the wallet on my personal device, not my government. We can't do it on the government device.
Right.
On my personal device, when I go out to places, tap. Because if you think about those credit cards, has a passive chip on them, and it's by you taking it out, someone can take that information off.
Right.
So it happens. My thing is, don't worry about it. Even one of my employees years ago, he's a certified ethical hacker. Certified ethical hacker that works for headquarters. Went to DEF CON. DEF CON is the underground hackers conference. So if you ever have any students or college people that that's really interested in cybersecurity, send them to DEF CON in August. It is one of the most eye-opening experiences you ever see in your life. They be hacking left and right. I mean, it's a good thing because last year they hacked Tesla. They have the grid, smart grid. They're showing these people how it can be done, and also showing them how to protect it. And this individual, years ago, he went to the conference. He's the one that's very secure. He understands cybersecurity totally. He uses a credit card at Caesar's Palace.